That's your boy Gooch.
That is the homie Keys. This over here, this gentleman, owner, RGR, Rogue Analytics and Consulting, owner of the YouTube channel, leader of Rogue Nation, husband, father, strength and conditioning coach, locked on draft. The man's got more irons in the fire than a blacksmith. Of course, you know, Ryan Case.
Schmo in blue, I like to call it. That's what I do. How you guys doing?
We are great. Glad to have you on, boss. Finally.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
And since everybody's time is limited except for mine, we'll just jump right into it. I was just curious, like analytics is so, for me, new. What possessed you to actually start your own consulting analytics firm?
Analytics is kind of like the new way to do things, right? It's not that different than what we've done forever, though, because when I started coaching like 1,000 years ago, right, we always did everything all year round was always a measurement of some kind: height, weights, body fats, how much you can put up. 1 PR maxes in the weight room, 40s on the field. When I was coming up in strength and conditioning and working for a D1 school, it was always the pro day. The pro day, the scouts always wanted the measurements. And so we've tracked all this stuff forever. We just always took it as raw data, as a straight comparison, to try to say apple to apple. And that's good. That's what you have to have. But there's more to it. None of the things that we do are anything that is in its entirety on the field. So you have to combine those things. And as the world evolved over the last 20 years, and I've been doing my thing outside of the NFL, like it started to make more sense. Well, I can combine all that and do all the data analysis that I do in my day job that I've been trained for over and over by these Fortune 15 companies, and make it applicable to the everyday guy that wants to watch the game with a little more insight.
It's actually interesting. I didn't think it'd be that interesting. Go ahead, Keith. You sound like you got something you want to say, brother.
Oh no, I enjoy it. I don't know about you, Ryan, but I'm a big Moneyball fan. Like that's how I think I had a period of time where I was more hardcore baseball than football for a while. But and I think that was some of it, you know, the Moneyball stuff. And so I kind of got over this way myself because of some of that stuff, you know, like market inefficiencies fascinate me. I'm not good at those things by any means, but I'm fascinated by it as well. So
you do a great job bringing it up in the Discord, though, and you bring a lot of good points of view. I think that the interesting change over there is what the original book was based on was baseball and being able to generate runs, right? But it wasn't necessarily about the cap at first. It was just about how do you get the product on the field, and then it devolved from that. And then the movie came out, and that kind of changed everything. I read that book like probably 2 years after it came out, and unfortunately, I think everybody kind of shifted because it's not dollars per production or dollars per yard in the NFL. Now it's turned into all this expected metrics. And I think that's where everybody wanted to go because the data scientists got involved. Eric Eager is just one of many data scientists that are on this topic because they saw what's applicable. And so I think that departure is kind of A and B, but that's Moneyball is a good source for a lot of people that are in this realm.
Okay, that actually brings me another question. So in the spirit of Moneyball, doing what you do, Keith understands it a lot more than I do. As far, do you find yourself more right than not when you do? Because, like, I think you do 100 prospects. Is that right? When you do the draft or whatever.
I used to. Now I do 200 and 250, something like that.
So, do you find yourself more right on those prospects than not? I mean, do you like hit this like I told you guys this guy was going to be special if you got him on the field or whatever? Or is it for me? And I'm not trying to be like I'm still learning that. Keys teaches me a lot of that as we go. But like, do you find yourself more, hey, I was right about that? You know, like
yeah, a lot. And the difference is for me is I'm doing what I've been trained to do, right? I'm a physiologist by nature. I'm a strength coach by experience. So I know what I'm doing in terms of what actually gives me a real data point. I'm not being theoretical. I keep myself in my wheelhouse though. Like I'm about the physiological, the athleticism, right? Anything in terms of like EPA or WAR or any things that have now grown in analytics, I don't venture into those too much because I'm not a data scientist. And I'm not as confident in that part. But in terms of the athleticism, from going late 90s, when I first started tracking things through my personal training business for 15 years to the analytics now, I've gotten better at it over the time. And now I can predict a difference between a guy that tests this way versus on the field. And if he has more to gain, if he's got upside athletically, physiologically, and I have gotten better about that over the years. I can tell you who the athletes are, even though that doesn't mean that they should be, a top round pick. Like even I had reservations about Willie Gay coming out, right? Punching your teammate in the locker room was an issue for me. I knocked him down my board for that. But physiologically, I knew that he was a better athlete process than Isaiah Thomas was. Isaiah Thomas, sorry. I'm going to mix up all these basketball names because I keep going over them. But that part comes ahead, right? Same thing with L'Jarius Sneed. It didn't mean that because he's an extreme athlete and because my analysis shows that I think he should be a first round pick. And I think that's where a lot of people get confused about what analytics is and what the result is in terms of prediction.
Okay, so I won't drag this out too much longer, but it actually brings up more questions, and I actually meant it's actually giving me more knowledge. Is this mostly film? Like, how can you one of the things when you were going through the draft, you were talking about a guy's quick first step, and I'm sure that's a crap ton of film study. You know what I'm saying? But how do you grade? Say, for instance, Bolton. Bolton, you had a third round grade on, which is kind of where he went to, and I thought he was too slow. Me and Keys both thought he was kind of too slow, but then it's how do you get one of the things that Keys always credits to you is for some reason your analytics also can get what is it, the nose for the ball, or it doesn't even though it was a third round grade, you know what I'm saying? You even said for some reason he he just plays smart. It's his thinking is a lot faster than most rookie linebackers would be at this stage in the game. He was always around the ball and a willing tackler. So how do you see that and then go, okay, so this might be a little step down from, say, Jesus, I don't know, some other linebacker. What's the linebacker for the Steelers?
Which one?
Devin Bush.
Bush, yeah, Bush.
Okay. Which is funny because Bush was a quicker guy off the ball in my metrics than White was. But you can see what the difference is in terms of how they've been able to evolve in the league, because what I do is a combination. And that's kind of why this whole thing with Rogue Analytics is we're a unicorn. And I've had help along the way with some of the more math-oriented guys that have helped me refine some of my models and things. But it's because that I have a coaching background too, that I can see on film a guy that looks like he can trigger. So for me, when I watch film, and in the old days, it used to be 50 or 100 prospects. And then I would try to match up their test results to them and kind of correlate them. Now I can take a look at the testing results, and then I go back and find it on film and see where did he hesitate? Where isn't he showing what he should be capable of, right? What's the discrepancy between what he's physically capable of on testing and what is he showing on the field? And the difference is the first step for edges, for linebackers, for deep safeties as well. It's the first step, because if your first step is toward contact, it's that time that it takes you to make that contact for me. That's what I term a quick get off, right? Especially for edge rushers. Now, some of those guys are better at timing snaps and that kind of thing, but it's from your stance to contact with the offensive lineman. That's what I look for. And then I look for, okay, how well can you run the curve? How well can you run the 3-cone? What is your explosion in your hips? Because from contact point, it's the hips that tell you whether you're going to be a good bull rusher, whether you convert your speed to power. And if you have speed on top of it, then you know you have a well-rounded guy that can do every kind of pass rush if you can coach him up on technique. But again, that's where I try to draw a good line. This is what he's capable of, that I can tell you for certain. You got to go coach him. I can't do that.
Can I throw some couple questions in here, Gooch, if you don't mind?
Go ahead, bro.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, would you say that you use because I think what Gooch was talking about is you have ways that you measure production, and then but you also measure should we say potential? Maybe not potential, but athletic ability. and kind of marry the two, what we're talking about here. So would you say that kind of college production is kind of sets a prospect's floor, and then the kind of the ceiling is set by the physical production, or the marriage of the two? Like, how would you describe that, I guess? Like how you see floors and ceilings using both sides of it.
Generally, what I see in college is the floor, but you have to be careful because there are always the freaks who don't have the technique to be on the film, so they can't be productive, but they have the physical capabilities that could take them up and their ceilings high because of it. So it's kind of a marriage. And that's why, even though I do numbers, we always have to go back to the film because you have to see how much was he on the field, how natural is he on the field. Like Nick Bolton, instinctual from the snap. Now, can he drop into 45-degree drop zones and get loose? Can he cover a man not in zone? No, that shows you on film that the change of direction isn't quite there. The explosive first step, the acceleration isn't quite there. But his instincts make up for that. So if he can play from a spot where he can do a quick drop and play downhill, that's what we see on the field now. We saw bits and pieces of it at Mizzou too, but that's where you got to kind of hunt and peck and compare the two. Because I have been burnt by saying, hey, this guy's got all the physical capability in the world, but he didn't have production. He's going to be fine. And those guys phase out, and the opposite is true too. You have staffs that take guys like Tano Passanio, who like what he did at whatever level of competition he had, and he had the physical capability, but then they still have to get him to develop his technique and change his pad level. And that's why I think you saw that delayed in Tano's progression until like the last season or two, where it finally sunk in and it became natural for him to use his athletic ability in the way that he needed to.
Yeah, another one, Keith.
Oh yeah, I could think of a couple more. When I think about this, I'm just kind of thinking about, is there a way that we can kind of measure um like a coaching staff's, success rate, like how much falls on a coach? Because, we can talk about this guy, for the players that their college production is high and their athletic potential suggests, that they're not that limited as an athlete. They have a lot of athletic potential too. Would we would expect that because they're high in both of those things, that when they get into the NFL, that they would be a safe bet to have a high floor and a high ceiling, and yet we don't always see that. So, and of course we don't know mentally, what might be going on there, but would that kind of be an indication for us when that happens that maybe it's a coaching issue?
Not necessarily an issue. It sometimes is a disconnect. It could be a coaching issue. That is certainly one of the possibilities. It could be a disconnect between the front office that is acquiring the player and the coaching staff that has to employ his talents, right? Sometimes there's disconnect there. And that's why you'll hear some people talk about he got drafted on the wrong team. He got drafted into the wrong scheme. And because even though the coaches might have a connection, they might be able to get their point across and actually bring him along in terms of teaching him, maybe they're in a scheme where it just doesn't fit his skill set. There's misuse all over the place. I think one of the things that we've seen, especially since he got his eyes fixed, Travarius Ward has been more adaptable, right? But had this been a scheme where he's able to get his hands on a receiver every rep all the time, I think we would be talking about probably a guy that's already been extended, let alone re-signing him now, right? Because I think it plays into his natural ability. And that control aspect, especially for a long DB like that when in contact has a much different outcome generally than when he's off. I think that those are the kind of things where you just get married into the wrong thing that isn't quite good for you, but somebody's stubborn somewhere.
Oh, that's a question we're going to touch on later. And I'm gonna get off. I'm gonna give you one more, and then we're gonna get straight to football, guys. I'm sorry, it's not every day you get Ryan 1-on-1 or 2-on-1, so I'm kind of milking it. Keys numerous times says, like RGR, the one thing aside from your willingness to allow like me and Keys to do something and Big Chief Sean and all that, one of the things that sets you apart from all the other shows is your analytics and the mind of it. So when you were sitting around, obviously a Chiefs fan for a long time, like me and Keith, what made you go, you know what? I'm just gonna start. RGR channel on YouTube or whatever, because I don't know if it was RGR first, but 5 years ago, I found maybe it was Locked On. You set the Matt, you know what I'm saying? And back when, and I tell people all the time, back when I couldn't donate, but you said I still took the time to answer questions when I put them out there. And you had to, you had to pick a team. You're either Team Seth or Team Ryan, run or pass. And so, what did you just decide one day, like, you know what, like I've got something that nobody else is offering? Because it seems like to me, after RGR, now that I look, everybody's got a Chiefs channel, and I went and looked at some, like the one that makes you pay after every time they want to ask a question or whatever.
Right.
All that happened after you. So then I'm just like, did you just wake up one day and go, hey, I can do this?
When I first started, there wasn't really a Chiefs channel on YouTube other than the mothership, right? BJ was doing his thing, and you were getting every now and then you'd see Mitch. And so, like, that's all good content, but it's not critical. It's not always honest. It's just what you can say when you're working for the people you're working for, and that's fair. But for me, I had gone through a progression. I had been a GA strength and conditioning coach and a linebacker coach in college. So I had started there. And then because of what happens with coaching staffs, and everybody knows this story, if you are a low guy on the totem pole and your staff gets fired, guess what? You ain't got a job either. So it just ended up to the point where I ended up getting a gig in another industry, and I had to go away from it for a while. Not by my choice, but I had to go do that. And things worked out. Some things in my life happened. My mom's passing was a big deal that kind of gave me a wake-up call that was like, if I want to do something, I should just do it. So that's when I was like, you know what, I'm going to start the podcast. And that's when we started that. And that grew into, okay, this is an audio only format. I can't really show people things. I can't really do film on an audio podcast. So there's this whole platform that I actually used because of my brother's influence, who's a professional photographer. And lighting tech, all that stuff. He's like, if you want to learn to take photos, go look at YouTube, because they'll show you how to do it. There's all kinds of good content on there. And I was like, well, then I'll just do that for football and see what happens. And, you guys showed up, and it was 100 of us for a couple of years. and then things started to click. And so I'm glad it's grown, but it's definitely different these days, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I can vividly remember. I was in, I don't know where I was in, probably Baltimore or something, and I just hit YouTube and hit Chiefs. And the first three things was highlights, and then of course there was BJ, and then there was you. And so I was like, well, let me see what this guy's talking about. And I listened to one, and I listened to you for, I think it was 30 minutes or 40 minutes. We were getting long then, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna subscribe. And it just kind of filtered. And now what, 20,000 subscribers later? Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Here we are. Okay, so if you were, obviously Patrick would say the season was a failure, so would CJ95. I think Keys would probably fit along there with me too, because the goal was the Super Bowl again. What would you grade the Chiefs season at? A through F, failure? Is there an in between?
It's certainly a failure because you didn't accomplish your goal. The mission is not done. But I will say this: I'm a little bit more lenient in that I'll give him like a C+, because the first 6 weeks it looked like it was going to be an utter failure, and they managed to figure some things out. Now, was it enough? No. Has it scarred a certain quarterback a little bit? Possibly. There are things that decision-making wise, in fact, there'll be a video that goes up here today or tomorrow, I can't remember, that is really about that decision-making process and what goes from the instinctual part from when he was drafted to what we're seeing now that isn't on the positive side. Things that have, you can call it regression, you can call it not progressing, whatever you want to do. He hasn't gotten worse throwing the football. He hasn't gotten worse reading a defense. I think it's all internal clock, and it's all desire to do certain aspects of the game that aren't necessary. And this is where I get into trouble, because I want to go stand on my soapbox and scream, run the damn ball again. Because, you guys have been here from the beginning. I've said that from the beginning. And this team and this coaching staff in particular is never going to do that. So I have to stop wishing for that. But you can see across the league where they're starting to see this more and more, and the run game will come back. The pendulum will swing back. And I hope that this team and this quarterback can embrace that, because it can help them be more effective and be back to what they were in terms of the explosive team that can always put up 30 points. And you don't struggle in the 24s like this anymore, because that's the margin of victory or defeat right there, is those 7 points.
Okay, so I know Keys, you got something because you're pursing your lips there, but give me one more. Now, I saw more running out of the Chiefs when we had Kareem.
Mhm.
Overall, Clyde is projected to be a better back than Kareem. So why am I only? My
Why?
only huh?
I don't necessarily agree with that, though. But
You know?
so why? No.
Well, because like I like Kareem. Kareem was a hard runner, but from
Mhm.
everything that you heard on draft day, even though we drafted him, everybody wanted Clyde because Clyde could expand your offense. Clyde could catch out of the backfield. Kareem could do the same thing. But what I'm saying is that if you put enough faith in this young guy that you drafted him in the first round, which you're never supposed to do, why all of a sudden the fall back from the run if he's supposed to be as well? Obviously, I'm a Kareem Hunt fan, but
Yeah.
why fall back from the run? It's almost as if Patrick doesn't trust him, whether he's height wise or something like that. He was easier to throw to McKinnon and Darrell than he was his
That's a
number one
very
guy.
good point, and I wish I had an answer for you. I think they're different pass catchers. I will say this: I think Clyde is better on the swings and the flats and the things where he has to torque his body, that he has to be able to adjust his angles of attack. Whereas Kareem, I think, was much better catching over his shoulder, taking on seams, being more of a vertical out of the backfield than a horizontal. And I don't know if that's just the difference in how Patrick wants to deliver the ball, or the fact that he doesn't want to lay it off into the flats, or certainly behind the line of scrimmage. So maybe that's it. I don't know. I was a Kareem Hunt fan too. I got to tell you, I love the way he runs. You guys have heard me. Not only do I prefer to run the ball more, I prefer to run it with power more. I want to go hurt people and wear people down physically. So I loved him for that. I don't like it when players act a fool. I'm sorry. And it's not something that I'm just going to like get over. If you don't take, for a guy who ran out of talent in high school and should have never tried to be a college player, and then ran out of opportunity as a college coach, for me to see somebody waste that opportunity, that pisses me off. And I don't generally let go of that.
If you were the GM of the Chiefs, obviously I'm a big fan of cutting Frank. Um, I think Tyron is a slot corner and should get paid 14.5, 14.5. I think he's a slot corner. And I would draft someone to fill Juan's shoes and pull Juan up into the Honey Badger role. But if you were the GM and you were sitting back looking at this team and you had just to do whatever you want, coaches on down, including players, what moves would you make?
I'm with you on Frank. I think his time has come and gone. And if they wanted him for some reason because of his locker room presence, or what he can bring, I'm fine with ending this contract and bringing him back on a 1 year, 6 or 8 or something like that, that is in line with what he produces. I don't have any problem with the person. I have a problem with the production per dollar, basically, is the way that works out. You have a good point about Tyron. I think, especially at his age, um, the nickel's probably the best spot, but he still has more to offer. Like his ability in space to go attack the ball and make those big plays, though it diminished this season, I think it's still there. So I'd call him a nickel plus, so they can do some of those things. The robber stuff where he can hide, and honestly, I think he's one of the few guys you'll see some in the draft, and I know I'll bring them all up. But I think honestly, because of his smaller size, he's able to hide in the field a little bit more, and I think that helps him. And so if he's locked up in a man nickel spot, I don't know that he has the opportunity to affect the game as much as that. So like I could even see going up to like 16, 17 if you had to, but that'd be the limit for me. And somehow I think that may not be what's in the asking right now. Maybe that they come to an agreement and he comes back. I think you have a very good point. I think Juan, unfortunately, is not comfortable being the free safety he was as a rookie. That's what I see on film. Is it's almost there, but it's not quite there. And the games that they have let him drift down, He looks capable there as well. We saw him play corner in college, so he's still got some of that too. I don't know that he can turn and run with slot corners any longer, but I like him in space as well. And there are some guys that can play over the top. Now, not everybody is going to be Hamilton from Notre Dame. So you can't just go get the guy that you can leave at the back of the defense all on his own. But there are some that are capable of playing that deep free that would free Juan up. And you can kind of make a progression of from draftee at the back to, middle tier veteran at the middle and oldest safety in the box and kind of move that forward. And that could happen if it's a Jabril Peppers kind of situation as well, or if they bring in another older veteran. One guy to keep an eye on, by the way, is Reed from Texas, the Texans. I think he'd be a nice addition that can play a little bit of back and forth with one where you could really hide who's going to be that single high if you want to disguise it and can play two deep all the time. I don't know that they want to go to that. I don't think we're going to see a huge change in what Spags wants to do. So we're going to have to see how they adapt. And I think if you guys have heard Matt Derrick on Locked On, he thinks that the defensive staff is set because they've made the announcement. And if that is the case, then I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of change in the way that the DBs play. So I would do the Frank thing. I would try to re-sign Tyron at slightly more than you, but close. I'm down with drafting another safety. I think safety right now is covering up deficiencies at corner. I'm still more of I want a man lockdown corner if I can get one. But look what happened to Jalen Ramsey too. So the way that players play today and the way the games are called, maybe that's not the best investment of resources, right? Maybe the safety can cover up more mistakes, and I'm fine with that. But I have to get to the quarterback if I'm the Chiefs coaching staff, no matter what. I can't. Pressure's great. Pressure allows you to have more opportunities to hit the quarterback. And I don't mean that they have to get sacks, but they got to knock them to the ground. That's the big thing for me. They have to make that physical impact on pass throwers so that they don't want to be in that pocket anymore. So that's where I'd go.
All right, I know my time is limited. I got one more, and then we'll get you out of here, I promise. I made a mention on Big Chief Sean's show, or maybe it was a Rogue Live. I can't remember. It seemed that the second half of the Bengals game, that all the negatives on Patrick's scouting report out of college, we saw it in the second half of the Bengals game. So I'm not one of those prognosticators like other channels that say Patrick threw the game on purpose. Why? Because he's got 450 million or anything like that. But I'm curious as to, me and Keith kind of debated this with the kind of first half that he had, 19 for 21, 20-some yards and so many TDs. What is it? I've heard other people say the failed touchdown right before the half got into his head. I don't think Patrick is that easily broken mentally, but I'm just curious as to why it seemed like he was holding the ball longer and kind of reverting back. Like you said, he's not getting worse at throwing the football. He's not getting worse at reading defenses. It's almost as if, like, all of a sudden, he reverted back to Texas Tech. I've got to be the hero. And so then you started seeing more of that than the Patrick that we've come to know and love. You got any insights? Or?
I happen to agree with you. I don't think that the first down, the last drive of the first half shook him in any way. Like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, or that I'm confused with that. I think what it did do is that, again, I don't think he wants to throw the ball laterally. It's not in his DNA. He wants to go vertical, even if it's in the intermediate area. And so, especially those plays, the last one to Tyreek where he had to go laterally and clearly it didn't work. One of the film breakdowns that should come out here by the time folks see this the other day, there's a play in the fourth quarter where he has Hardman, who has broken free and has the defender beat, and he wouldn't throw it to him. It's either a trust issue with some of the receivers, or it's a trust in the fact that he wants to make sure that it goes forward, not laterally. That's what I see, because I don't think his footwork's much different. He made some improvement his rookie year. I think he's right about the same as he was. I think that the difference is that the decision-making and the trust factor in allowing the other players to make plays for him because things are more difficult now isn't quite there. And I think that's kind of a letting go. You know, he's used to being the man. He's used to the one who the guy's open and he makes the big throw, but now the guy's not open. He's got to make a better throw that allows the other player to be the star in making the catch rather than the fantastic throw. take it easy. Just take what's there. And that's, I think, a discipline that he's never had before. And he's finding now, with all the success and the way that they've decided to play him, that he's got to be more disciplined.
All right, I'm gonna cut these off. Hey, you guys, like I actually did most. This is different than what we normally do, but Ryan's got to bounce, so we appreciate the time. Hopefully, we can have him on again where we plug his mind for more football stuff because he's got a lot up there, and I find out a lot more than I knew on Monday. So I'm just gonna take it from here. We appreciate all you guys that have watched this content, whether religiously or passing. Check out all the other stuff we have on RGR. Stop at the RGR merchandise store, get a trooper, get a hoodie, get an all juice shirt. I'm sure that's still there. Support the foundation for Therese. Go back, check out all our other videos. We've got the live stream Q&A. Ryan answers every question he can. Chief of the North on Thursday. Dan has film breakdowns during the week. Obviously, your boys here, me and Keys, on Friday. All three of us on Twitter. All three of us are in the Discord. And make sure you tell somebody you love them. With everything that goes on in the world, you never want to be too late to give somebody their flowers while they can appreciate them. And we appreciate you guys. So we'll catch you in the next one.
Peace out, guys.
Thanks for watching this video from the team at RGR Football. Click these videos to see more and subscribe to RGR Football.